Thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
No, I cannot support a budget that nearly doubles the garbage fee for working people.
Despite that, critics of the mayor's budget proposal are moving forward with one of their own. Indiana lawmakers are set to vote on a redistricting plan as the national fight over congressional seats comes closer to home.
I am being forced out of my home because of a series of choices that I did not make.
And tenants of the South Shore apartment building raided by federal agents are being forced to move. First off tonight, the FBI is seeking the public's help in identifying any other potential victims of a U.S. Border Patrol agent who's charged with using his position to rob and sexually assault women in the western suburbs. Federal prosecutors say 44-year-old Luis Uribe repeatedly forced his way into the victims' hotel rooms where he robbed them at gunpoint or attempted to sexually assault them at hotels in Naperville and Schaumburg. The four alleged victims are all of Chinese descent. The FBI is asking any other potential victims to give them a call. Chicago Transit Board members are pushing back against the latest criticism from the Trump administration about safety on the city's rails and buses. During today's regular CTU board meeting, member Robert Roquejo said, quote, "It hurts me to say that I'm not happy with the security of our trains and our train stations yet, even if I can also acknowledge that there has been significant and measurable progress made in the past year." The Federal Transit Administration has cited the high-profile attack of a woman set on fire while riding the Blue Line train last month in claiming the CTA has failed to meet its obligations to safety. CTA officials say FTA is demanding the agency develop a verifiable security enhancement plan by December 15th. A Chicago man who spent 33 years in prison for a double murder he didn't commit will receive more than $15 million from the city. Alderpeople approved the settlement for Robert Smith, seen here third from the left, who confessed to the 1987 murder of his mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law under torture from detectives trained by disgraced former commander John Burge. His attorneys claim one of those detectives was then Lieutenant, future CPD Superintendent Phil Klein. Back in 2022, Klein told reporters that it would be a miscarriage of justice for Smith to receive a settlement. Smith's life in prison sentence was vacated in 2020. For more on just how much the city has spent settling wrongful conviction lawsuits this year, you can visit our website. Up next, a busy day at City Hall. Heather Sharon is back to break it down.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Critics of the mayor's budget proposal are moving forward with their own plan. Their proposal looks to bridge Chicago's billion-dollar budget gap without hiking taxes on large firms. But Mayor Brandon Johnson today remained defiant.
I don't support a budget that places such an incredible burden on working people at a time in which President Trump has made life quite difficult for working people across this country. The city of Chicago should not be adding to that burden. And so, no, I cannot support a budget that nearly doubles the garbage fee for working people.
Our Heather Sharon joins us now from City Hall with the latest as alderpeople have just 20 days left to pass a budget. Heather, did the mayor and his critics make any progress towards a budget deal today?
No. 27 alderpeople signed on to a proposal that strikes at the heart of the mayor's budget proposal, which would impose a $33 per month per employee tax on firms with at least 500 employees. They say that proposal will stifle growth, but the mayor says he will not approve a budget that he says fills the city's $1.2 billion budget gap by taxing working people, leaving the debate deadlocked.
Heather, the rival budget plan, which the mayor said would jeopardize the city's financial position, has been revised. What did they change?
Well, it is a complicated plan that strives to not only eliminate the head tax, but pay nearly $140 million more towards the city pension and eliminate the need to borrow $166 million to pay back pay to firefighters who worked without a contract for 4 years. Part of the way this plan envisions doing that is to count on new revenue from slots installed at O'Hare and Midway airports. In fact, it counts on nearly $50 million from those machines. However, that would be more revenue than the city is counting on from both the temporary casino open now at the Medina Temple and the permanent casino, which is scheduled to open in 2026. The mayor says it's projections like that make this alternative plan completely unrealistic and not worth truly considering.
Then, Heather, what's next?
Well, as you said, the city has just 20 days to figure this out. So the city council agreed today to meet Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and December 23rd in the hopes of scheduling a meeting where a plan could come to a vote and perhaps win a majority of votes. How exactly that is going to happen is very unclear at this moment.
Okay, so in other news at City Hall, the debate over the city's curfew heated back up with a new proposal from Alderman Brian Hopkins. How would this one work, Heather?
Well, this would give Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling the power to declare essentially a preemptive curfew 12 hours in advance of a planned large gathering. It was that kind of gathering that drew hundreds of teens down to downtown on November 21st. A 14-year-old boy and 8 other teens were injured in shootings at that gathering. Alderman Hopkins says it's clear that the city needs to do more to sort of deter these gatherings from taking place. However, the mayor vetoed the last attempt to expand the police department's curfew powers, and he has expressed deep skepticism that a proposal like this one would have any impact on these gatherings.
And Heather, really quick before we let you go, the City Council did not vote on a measure that would have banned the sale of intoxicating hemp, even as changes are in the works. What's the latest?
Well, a revised proposal is circulating among alder people. It would allow hemp-infused drinks to continue to be sold at bars and restaurants that have liquor licenses. Sponsors of the ordinance say that might be enough to win a majority of supporters on the City Council. But the mayor remains opposed to this proposal, and he has not ruled out vetoing it if it does pass the City Council.
Okay, we'll see what happens. Heather Sherwin at City Hall for us. Thank you. And you can read Heather's coverage of today's council meeting on our website. It is all at WTTW.com/news. The nationwide redistricting battle heads to Indiana as the state Senate is set to vote tomorrow on a plan to redraw its congressional districts. The proposed remap, which has already passed the Indiana House, would likely give Republicans control of all 9 of Indiana's congressional seats. The controversial plan is dividing Indiana Senate Republicans who are facing mounting pressure from the Trump administration. Joining us now with more are Kathy Cortez, Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Illinois, and on Zoom, Mike Murphy, a former Republican state representative in Indiana who now works in corporate communications. We also invited a number of Republican members of the Indiana legislature, but they declined. We thank the 2 of you for joining us. First, just what is your reaction to this national remap effort that is getting closer to home? Kathy Cortez?
You know, I think it's a really unfortunate downward spiral of actions that are working against the voting American public. And I think that stands regardless of how this plays out to the advantage or disadvantage of either the Democrats or the Republicans. Doing midterm redistricting in order to manipulate the outcome of an election can't possibly be a good thing for democracy.
Mike Murphy, same question to you.
Well, I think you have to understand what the general purpose of this is. This redistricting has nothing to do with President Trump's policy or his agenda. In my opinion, it has everything to do with him trying to avoid a third impeachment and potentially setting up the groundwork for a potential third term. And in exchange for that, the Republicans in the Indiana Senate are on the verge of throwing out everything they did just 4 years ago and were so proud of, which was a very balanced, very fair congressional district maps that had a 7-2 advantage.
So, Mike, Indiana, as you said, already a Republican majority state with 7 GOP congressional seats and 2 Democratic seats. Now, this proposed remap, would likely give Republicans control of all 9 seats. Of course, that depends on the voters. But how much of a difference does that make for Indiana residents, but then also in Congress?
Well, I think what it does, we don't know who those 2 additional congresspersons would be. But I think what it does to voters is it likely helps suppress the vote. Mid-year elections are generally low turnout in Indiana anyhow, maybe 19% or so. So you could win a primary with 10 or 11% of the vote, literally. And the people who generally would come out are going to be less motivated than ever because they have a new district, they may have a new congressman. Some of these districts stretch all the way from Lake County up near you in Indiana, all the way over to the east side of the state in Wabash. It destroys communities of interest. It destroys any kind of cultural similarities. We have one district that goes all the way from northern Marion County to the southeast corner of Indiana, where right next to Cincinnati. So it could take what we thought were very fair districts passed in the 2021 legislative session, and it looks like a bowl of noodles that somebody has dropped on the floor and forgotten to pick up.
Kathy, if the remap becomes law in Indiana, what could that mean for Illinois? Governor Pritzker has said that Illinois would respond, whatever that means.
You know, it's an interesting situation because we already in Illinois, as you know, have a pretty unbalanced congressional representation that's slanted toward the Democratic Party. But to be honest, there may be a lot of party voters on the Democrat side that are saying we need to do something, right, in order to counteract the manipulation that's happening in Indiana. So I think it's really a tough spot because I think most people or most of our representatives in Illinois are probably not largely in favor of it, but there is a chance that their voting public could encourage them strongly to do it.
I mean, much like Indiana, right? We're trying to squeeze out just a couple of more seats. Can Illinois do that? Because currently only 3 of the congressional seats in Illinois are Republican.
Well, you've seen the maps for Illinois today, right? It would make for some awfully interesting maps. Were they able to do it? I don't know if it's possible. Certainly not something that that I've looked at or League has looked at. But it would make for some very interesting maps if they had to do further manipulation.
Look like the bowl of noodles that Mike Murphy referenced a minute ago.
Messy noodles, probably spaghetti. Yeah.
Mike, other Republicans are arguing that they're pursuing this route to counteract other Democratic states' remaps, and that voters would benefit from more conservative representation in a red state, an already red state like Indiana. Is it reasonable for states to say that they are only responding in kind? Well, a Democratic state did it, so now a Republican state has to do it, and vice versa.
Well, it depends what your values are, Brandis. I mean, in Indiana, we like to think, both parties, frankly, like to try to do what's right. My mom taught me that 2 wrongs don't make a right. So we would suggest that what they do in California and New Jersey really don't influence us. In fact, in Indiana, we're kind of stubborn people. And, if you tell us to vote for something because California did it or New Jersey, we say that's the biggest reason we shouldn't do anything. We tend to focus and solve our own problems. And it's disappointing that senators that I know are being swatted by unknown persons the FBI is investigating, but they're getting terrible threats from people in California and South Dakota and people who have no business getting involved in Indiana politics.
Well, and to that point, there is intense pressure on the state right now, both from the Trump administration, but some lawmakers who are opposed to this remap are getting threats. As you said, they're being swatted or receiving other sorts of threats. That said, if the state should go through with this, could this backfire for Republicans down the road?
Absolutely. I always say that in politics, greed kills. And we don't have time to talk about all the details now, but it's happened before in Indiana when the Republican Party, and because of their hubris, has hurt themselves in the long term. And, there's no guarantees, especially with a low voter turnout, that you're going to get the 9-0, result that you're hoping for. They could go backwards. It could be 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats, for all we know. It's just a very risky thing. And, one thing about politics, the best laid plans almost always go wrong. And that's what I'm afraid may happen in this case.
Kathy, what do you make of the way elections and this remap battle have gotten to be so hyper-partisan, leading to even some of the violence and the threats that we just mentioned?
It's really unfortunate because at the end of the day, it's the American voter whose voice should matter the most. Not someone from the Democratic Party, not someone from the Republican Party. It's damaging the voice that people have. It's also damaging, by the way, the amount of moderation that we have in our state legislatures and in Congress, right? If you have more equal, there should be a way to listen better to people on the other side, have a better exchange, and even if it's heated, at least an exchange and a debate. And that is what I think is really being harmed, is the additional polarization that this sort of stuff causes. And what people don't recognize is that it's not, your next door neighbor might be someone who is from a different party. Right? It's not hurting someone over here or over there. It's dividing neighbors and it's dividing voters, and that just is not good for where America needs to be going.
Okay. That's where we'll have to leave it, where America is right now. Kathy Cortez and Mike Murphy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Up next, what's happening to residents of a South Shore apartment building made prominent by a controversial ICE raid? A Cook County judge rules this week that residents of a South Shore apartment building raided by federal agents in September must vacate their apartments by Friday. Judge Deborah Ann Seaton denied a 60-day extension request, saying it would, quote, be inhumane for this court not to relocate people as quickly as possible, citing potential natural gas and plumbing issues. Tenants of the building are acknowledging the terrible living conditions, but many say they have nowhere else to go. Joining us is Dixon Romeo, Executive Director for Southside Together, a community organization serving Southside neighborhoods. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, day before Thanksgiving, residents of 7500 South Shore found out that they would have to leave their units by December 12th. And to be clear, that's in a couple of days from now. They learned this via paper notice to vacate. What was that like for tenants who were, it was in the lobby?
Yeah.
What was that like for them to find out, realizing that they're going to have to move out based on a note taped up in the lobby?
So Southside Together and Metropolitan Tenants Organization MTO worked with tenants to organize a tenant union because they were reaching out to us saying, hey, here are the conditions of the building post-ICE raid. We were familiar with some of those conditions pre-ICE raid. And what tenants have been demanding the entire time, right, is the reason there is a tenant union because the building is in deplorable condition, right? And what tenants are ultimately trying to win and get was more time in the building to get relocated because everyone acknowledges that the building is not in good condition.
Okay, so they weren't necessarily asking, please fix this building up. They were saying, help us get out.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, this property has been in disarray for a long time, right? The ICE raid obviously made it worse. But the reality of it is that now that the attention has shifted off the ICE raid and we're talking about the black folks left in the building, right? What is the city of Chicago? What is the state of Illinois? What are all the partners doing to help, right? All the people who were outraged at what happened, what do we do for the residents that are left, as well as the folks who were taken by ICE?
What's been the condition of the building since the ice raid? Because this is when everybody really found out about all the problems that residents already knew about.
The conditions that were bad before have been exacerbated, right? The doors off the hinges, the lack of light, gas, all the things that the judge named we know are the case. The issue that the tenants have named is that the receiver has not tried to relocate anyone, right? Like they've offered relocation assistance, which isn't the same thing as relocating, right? Like as you said, it's really hard to get a lease on December 12th or 13th, right? And so that's what we and the tenants filed the motion to get the extension done for. But ultimately it wasn't successful, but because the tenants organized and came together, not only do we have the support of each other as a tenant union, but also a lot of folks in the community are coming together offering financial, but also material support, right? Helping folks move out.
Even before the raid, living conditions at the building, they had been subpar. Like you said, according to the tribe, the building had not passed a conservation complaint building inspection since 2000. How long have tenants been living under these conditions?
There's some tenants in the building who've been living there 20 years, right? We've been organizing in South Shore. I live in South Shore. And one of the reasons why we organized to get the CBA ordinance, Jackson Park Housing Pilot Ordinance passed in September this year, is because of the conditions in the neighborhood, right? Like South Shore is the eviction capital of Cook County, of the city. It is a 75% tenant neighborhood, right? It's an overwhelmingly black neighborhood. And what happens is you often have landlords who live out of state, sometimes out of the country, who don't care about the conditions of the neighborhood, right? And seek to profit off of the neglect of the building, right? Like I will keep raising the rent regardless of what it looks like. The interesting thing about the 7500 building is that there are a number of people in the building who are disabled. Very few buildings in our neighborhood have meeting rooms, right, things like that, but more importantly, elevators, right? And so one of the reasons we have folks who live in the building who are disabled is because it's the elevator, right? The elevator has been broken, just recently got fixed to allow tenants to move out, but that's why people stay in a building like that, because where else can you afford to live, but also it's accessible for you.
In a building with an elevator. Following the raid, the real estate company Friedman Communities became the court-appointed receiver. One of the demands by tenants has been that Friedman repair the building, restore the heat and electricity. Has Friedman been, no relation obviously, have they been open to hearing these demands from residents?
Not especially, no. There was supposed to be a meeting with the tenant union on Friday of last week that the Friedman canceled actually before the court date. Tenants, they've essentially been trying to go around the tenants coming together and try to talk to folks individually. They've said things in court that aren't true in real life, right? Like one of the things that happened on the court case was that they said that they were going to relocate people. That has not been the case, right? Tenants have asked about support moving, support. Those things haven't happened. The elevator did get fixed, right? So that folks, I think, have the ability to move. But ultimately, the things that the tenants have demanded that are doable, even in the short term, haven't been done.
Tenants asked Judge Seaton for a 60-day extension, of course, beyond December 12th, but she decided to keep the original date, as we mentioned at the beginning. But residents have expressed some frustration that they didn't feel like they were allowed to speak during the hearing. What more do you think the judge should have heard from them before making her decision? I
think that the words of the receiver were taken as at face value, and the words of the tenants or the lawyer that the tenants hired, Sam Barr from Lawyer Committee for Better Housing, should have been given equal space in the court.
Okay. Now, despite the living conditions, tenants have petitioned for extra time, talking about, again, the lack of other options and resources. How are they navigating this path forward? Have any of them been able to secure alternate housing?
Yeah, some have, right, but overwhelmingly a lot haven't, right? We, even as of today, like an hour ago, right, we're hearing from some landlords in the neighborhood, some people offering financial assistance, some people offering allow folks to rent. The city of Chicago has, via the mayor's office, offered a nice assortment of resources as well, but we haven't heard much from the governor. And so that's just what's there, right? It is a very chaotic situation, and we're doing our best to help adjust it. I do know the judge gave the receiver some latitude to potentially let folks stay until the 19th, but we haven't heard from the receiver. Tenants have been reaching out asking for that time.
And how many tenants are we talking about that are still searching?
37 units worth of folks that were in the tenant union, and I know of at least 15 units of folks that we have to move out tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Okay. So folks have some place to go of those few that are moving out tomorrow. Okay.
That we had to reasonably find between Monday and now. Yeah.
Okay, so you're still looking for those folks, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, between now and the deadline.
Yeah.
Really quick, we know that the mayor sent a letter to Friedman on the tenants' behalf. What would you like the governor to do? I know, and the mayor for that matter.
I mean, I think we want all folks who represent us, right, to speak up and speak out and do things that they can support, especially when it comes to Black folks in the Black neighborhood.
Okay, that's where we'll have to leave it. Best of luck to you, of course, and the tenants that you're working with, Dixon Romeo, from Southside Together. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Reflecting the people and perspectives that make up our communities, this story is part of Chicago Tonight, Black Voices.
And that's our show for this Wednesday night. If you're looking for something festive to do this weekend, be sure to check out our website for our holiday events guide. That's at WTTW.com/holiday events. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Meet Cook County's first new chief judge in more than 2 decades. Charles Beach joins us to talk about his new role, the electronic monitoring system, and more. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that gives back to its community in Chicago and beyond.